Well, I'm out today and I'm riding with a radar. And the radar I've got is a Bryton Gardia 300L. I've never ridden with a radar before. I've read about them, but I didn't really think I needed one. I mean, a lot of the reviewers of these things tell you that they're absolutely essential, but then these reviewers, well, we've spoken about that before. Some of them get paid, and some of them just depend on the manufacturers giving them product. So they're hardly likely to say, oh, it's a completely pointless thing, are they? But then, all of a sudden, on the Amazon spring day, whatever, the Bryton Gardia 300L was £75. And the Garmin Varia is, well, double that, 160. So I was tempted. You know, there's a scene in the film, A Bridge Too Far, where somebody comes up to Sean Connery and he says to him, "Cup of tea, sir?" And he says, "We're surrounded by the enemy. We've got no communication and we're out of ammo. What good is a cup of tea going to do?" And this fellow says to him, "Well, yes, sir, but it wouldn't do any harm, would it?" And so I thought, well, for that price, it won't do any harm. Anyway, next time I looked, back up to 95 quid, so the idea went out the window. And then, a couple of weeks later, I got a notification saying this product that you've looked at is available today only for 70 quid. And I thought, I'll have it. I sometimes wonder if Amazon don't do targeted deals, you know. They go, oh look, this bloke's looked at this several times and he was going to buy it when it was 75 quid, but now that it's 95 he won't touch it. Let's give him a deal. Am I thinking too much? I don't know. But nevertheless, I got it. And it arrived a couple of days ago. I'd like to tell you that the setup was easy, but it wasn't. I'd watched a review by DC Rainmaker where he said the Gardia was worse than useless. And then I read another one, or should I say I watched another one on the YouTube of Llama Labs, and he said it works pretty well because there's been a firmware update and they fixed a lot of the problems. So the first thing it tells you to do is connect it to your phone, download the app and update the firmware. So you do that, and the firmware refuses to update. It just won't download. It sits there for about half an hour. at 0% until eventually you just abandon it. So you have to go out the app and restart your phone and fiddle about, and eventually I got it to do it. I have heard of other people who had to send them back and get a different one because they simply refused to update. It's just so common these days for manufacturers to release products to the market that just don't work. As I said before, when I got my DJI cameras, the biggest surprise was that they actually work. I love riding around the seaside on a sunny day. So with the firmware updated, I attached it to the bike, and that's easy. You give you different types of mounts, but I just put it on and it's sitting there fine. But getting it linked to the Garmin, well, that wasn't as easy as I'd hoped. It's all a bit childish, really. Even though they advertise that this unit is compatible with any other Ant Plus device, they'll only give you instructions on how to connect it to a Bryton head unit. And similarly, Garmin tell you that you can use several different types of radar, but they'll only give you instructions to connect to Garmin. I mean, don't get me wrong, it connects up easy enough. You go to sensors, new sensor, and it finds it. And then you get the big warning telling you that it's not a Garmin radar, so if anything goes wrong, they don't want anything to do with you. But the first problem was I couldn't get the light to work. I tried everything. And as soon as you switched it on, it switched back off. So I went into the Gardia app to see if there was a way of doing it in there. And the same thing. You can switch it on using the app, and as soon as you switch it on, it switches back off again. So I went into the Garmin and fiddled around and into sensor settings and one thing and another, and then somehow or another I got the light to work. But when I came back from the ride, it wouldn't switch itself off when I switched the Garmin off. And that's really one of the things I want, is for it to switch itself on and off, like my Bontrager rear light does. And the reason I got that was that I continually forget to switch lights on. Anyway, turns out you can only have one light connected to the Garmin, which some might think is obvious, but I wanted to keep my Bontrager light linked until I was sure this one would work. And I've got 3 different cadence sensors linked to it. So I disconnected the Bontrager light, and touch wood, it's working now. So the question is, how well does it work? And do you really need one? And the answer to that is, well, you probably don't need one, but it is really handy. It's really useful to know if there's a car behind you and you can move over and let them go. Because I'd rather the cars were behind me than in front of me. And it's really good for getting ready to turn right, and if you want to move out behind a parked car, this has this little dot on the side, tells you there's something there, tells you how close it is and how fast it's going. And that really is the top and bottom of it, which doesn't sound like much, but yeah, once you use it, you realise just how useful it really is. I don't think it's as good as the Garmin. There's a couple of times where a car's come up behind me and hasn't picked it up until quite late, and one thing and another. But nevertheless, I still think it's a good thing to have. If you live somewhere where there's a lot more traffic than around here, maybe the Garmin would be worth the extra money. I don't know. I mean, we don't have as much traffic as some parts of the country, I know. And one thing I do know that we have in common with everywhere else is that a lot of car drivers hate us. So if we can get out of their way and let them go past, it's going to be an advantage to everyone. So I'm sold. It's one of those things, you never knew you wanted one until you had it. Once you've got it, you don't want to be without it.